Hello everybody, it's TannerFishies here, back again with a new Ninjago video here on the channel. In today's video, we are finally going to be celebrating Day of the Departed. Happy Day of the Departed to all of my lovely subscribers and all of my fellow Ninjago fans. Unfortunately, Day of the Departed was yesterday, and we missed it by a day. Do you guys really care? Because I kind of don't. It's no secret that I personally do not care for Day of the Departed as it is. I still think this Halloween-ish special for Ninjago is one of the worst things that the series has ever put out there in terms of content. That is, of course, just my humble opinion, and I oftentimes will make videos around this time of year discussing my updated thoughts on Day of the Departed as a special, and every single year I still do not like it. One of the first major Ninjago videos that I've ever made on this channel was actually me insulting Day of the Departed all those years ago. It's been about 5 years since then, and naturally my yearly rewatch of Day of the Departed has come and gone, and I still don't like it 5 years later. In my opinion, the special is just riddled with problems and inconsistencies. Awful writing, awful character development, bland villains that of course are returning from previous seasons, terribly written dialogue, mediocre action scenes, and just a whole lot more. Every single year for October I rewatch this thing, and this year was no different, and I still do not like it. However, instead of bashing Day of the Departed for the 5th year in a row, why don't we talk about the alternate version of Day of the Departed, which you guys have been asking me to talk about on the channel for quite some time. For those of you that don't know, there is indeed a different cut of Day of the Departed, an alternate version, if you will, of this exact same story. And a lot of Ninjago fans prefer this version over the original release in English. This alternate Day of the Departed was released for Eastern audiences. This never aired in English to my knowledge, and this alternate cut of Day of the Departed essentially follows the exact same story as the original special. But like I said, a lot of Ninjago fans that have heard about this alternate cut prefer this over the original. In a way, this is kind of a lost Ninjago episode that not a lot of people talk about. And in addition to watching the original cut of Day of the Departed this year, I actually went ahead and watched the alternate version all the way through for the first time. And I have to say, it is slightly better to an extent. I'll get more into how I feel about that later on. If you want to watch this for yourself, I'd recommend checking it out on YouTube. It is available in full on various YouTube channels. The only catch is it's not in English, but a lot of the dialogue from the original English release of Day of the Departed lines up pretty well with this alternate version. So if you want to watch it, I'd say take the audio from English and put it over this alternate cut to make a pretty satisfactory Day of the Departed alternate edition. It's not perfect, but once again, it's satisfactory. And since I had watched this for the first time, this was a new experience for me altogether. So let's get into talking about how I felt about this alternate cut of Day of the Departed. What worked for me and what didn't. Let's get into it. So essentially, as mentioned earlier, this cut follows the exact same story as the original release of Day of the Departed did. Across Ninjago, various villains come back to life to fight a respective ninja, while Cole deals with his ghostly identity and the reappearance of Master Yang. A big difference from this version as opposed to the original is a different opening scene. In the original cut of Day of the Departed, the ninja can be seen riding in the Ultra Stealth Raider alongside other vehicles that were released for that specific line of sets. In the opening scene in the alternate cut, the ninja actually fight over a golden katana as a sort of training session, and we get similar introductions to each of the ninja. I find this to be a lot more of an effective way of showcasing the ninja, because we actually get to see their powers alongside their personality. There is still a brief Ultra Stealth Raider sequence at the beginning of this alternate cut, but it's not as long and it does not introduce the ninja like the original English release of Day of the Departed did. There are of course several other differences. Various sequences are tweaked, they look different. There is a drastic difference in animation and art style because this was not made by the same animation studio that traditionally made Ninjago during that time. This is not Will Film Animation right here, from what I can tell at least. But speaking of animation, it's okay. A lot of it does look unfinished sometimes. I do think that is something that the original release of Day of the Departed has over this alternate cut. The animation looks a lot better in the original release. However, in the alternate cut, there are indeed some cool action sequences that are somewhat improved upon over the original. For instance, part of me really enjoys the Cole RX scene in the alternate cut as opposed to the original. I just find the animation to be a lot better, a lot more crisp, and it seems a lot more grand on a scale, as opposed to the original cut, which had a pretty lackluster sequence relating to the Earth Punch or Cole's RX powers. In fact, a lot of the improvements of this alternate cut of Day of the Departed pretty much much relates to action sequences and fight scenes. While the original Day of the Departed was very mediocre when it came to action scenes or battle sequences, I find the alternate cut to be a lot more compelling and a lot more, dare I say, riveting, interesting. I mean, it's actually fun to watch, so I guess that's something. But the main issue is that it's still the exact same story, and the story itself is very weak. Multiple villains coming back, teaming up, and taking on the ninja is a genius idea. However, this alternate cut does very little to improve upon the story, and a lot of the issues that I have with this version of Day of the Departed are issues that I have with the original English release. A lot of the story elements have not changed. Again, the main difference from one cut to another is animation and action sequences. Animation in this alternate cut, once again, is not perfect. There are some pretty ridiculous and unintentionally funny scenes going on in this particular cut of Day of the Departed. For instance, one of my favorite moments from the entire thing is that Morrow collapses and simply falls apart, and I guess just straight up dies, as opposed to the original cut, which actually had Morrow returning to his statue. In this alternate version, he just kind of falls apart, seemingly with the same style as a Lego video game. I found that to be very funny and extremely unexpected, so I find myself wanting to give this alternate version bonus points simply for that scene. Otherwise, my experience was pretty much the same thing. I do prefer some action sequences in the alternate cut as opposed to the original English release of Day of the Departed, though I do think the original release has a lot over this alternate cut, especially in terms of art style. The characters just seem a lot more crisp in that original cut as opposed to this cut where there's definitely something wrong. However, the unfinished animation still provides a lot of interesting fight sequences, and honestly, I found myself to be quite intrigued by the action sequences in the alternate cut. Maybe it's just because I'm watching something new as opposed to watching the exact same uninspired action sequences for the 5th year in a row. In terms of my final thoughts on this alternate cut of Day of the Departed, do I think it's worth watching? Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say if you guys are a fan of Ninjago or even just a fan of Day of the Departed, or if you're like me and you don't really care for Day of the Departed, I'd still recommend checking out this alternate cut. It's essentially the same product but with different packaging, but I find each version to have its own strengths and its own weaknesses. In a way, both of these cuts of Day of the Departed provided a different experience altogether. And that might just be me talking. Some of you guys might not see that many differences from one cut to another, but I do think they are both worth watching and worth comparing. In regard to which version I prefer, it honestly doesn't matter to me. I still find the special to be unbearable and hard to watch every single year. At least some things were improved upon with this alternate cut, but in reality, it really doesn't make a difference to me personally which version I watch. If I had to pick one though, I'd probably pick the alternate cut, just because it's unintentionally funny and not in the painful way. So with that being said, you guys, thank you very much for checking out this video. I hope I was able to explain my stance on this alternate cut of Day of the Departed and convince you guys to watch it for yourself. I will leave a link to the alternate version of Day of the Departed down below in the description in case you guys want to check it out for yourself. However, if you have seen it, feel free to let me know down below in the comments what you thought about it. Happy Day of the Departed to all of my fellow Ninjago fans. I know I'm a little late regarding this subject, but hey, at least I provided something different this year, as opposed to simply bashing Day of the Departed for the 5th year in a row. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and check out the links down below in the description from other forms of social media. As always, big shout out goes out to my Patreon supporters, including once again the marvelous Jan. Thank you all so much for checking out today's video once again. My name is TannerFishies, and with that I bid you farewell.